We're now going to look at the relative stability or potential energy of alkenes. To do this, we're going to use a number called the delta H of hydrogenation. We've already looked at the hydrogenation reaction in the previous section here. What we saw was that the reaction has this form. We take a double bond, we react it with hydrogen gas and palladium, platinum, or nickel metal catalyst. In the reaction, the double bond is essentially removed, and in its place are substituted two hydrogen atoms. The interesting thing about this reaction is that it is exothermic. The product has less potential energy than the reactant, and so as we go from reactant to product, the system releases potential energy, which we interpret as getting hot, and we can measure that potential energy using a calorimeter. If we measure that, what we would be measuring is delta H. So this experiment was done, and when they did this experiment, they had to be very careful about the alkenes they chose to measure and compare. They wanted to directly compare the delta H numbers. So in order to make that work, what they did was they chose 3 constitutional isomer alkenes that, when hydrogenated, would all form the same product. The reason for this is that the potential energy of a molecule is always the same no matter how you made it. So if I make butane by hydrogenating this and eliminating the double bond from 1 butene, if I make it from 2 butene, I make butane, what I get is all the butane molecules should have the same amount of potential energy at the end. This will then allow us to compare these numbers because, since they all end at the same place, we can compare the relative heights of where they started. Notice these are negative numbers, so we're going down. So if we go down and end at the same place, the more that we went down, the higher we had to start. So look at these 3 alkenes. What we have here is we have 1 butene. It's actually, in my graph, I still have them named old-fashioned way. Should be but1-ene. We have 2-butene in the cis stereoisomer, so cis-2-butene or cis-but2-ene. And we have trans-2-butene or trans-but2-ene. We can see that that 1-butene has the highest potential energy. That means it's the most unstable. We can see that both of the but2-enes are lower in potential energy than the 1-butene, but that the cis is a little bit higher than the trans, meaning the trans is more stable than the cis. Looking at this data, scientists drew 2 conclusions. First is that more substituted alkenes, in other words, alkenes that have more carbon groups attached, have a lower potential energy and are therefore more stable. So we can see this, that but1-ene has only this ethyl carbon group attached. It's mono-substituted. In contrast, both of the but2-enes have a methyl group on one carbon of the double bond attached and a methyl group attached to the other carbon of the double bond. So they have a total of 2 carbon groups attached and are di-substituted. And we see that the di-substituteds have a lower potential energy than the mono-substituted. However, if we look at cis-2-butene and cis-trans-2-butene, they're both di-substituted, and yet they don't have identical potential energies, so there must be another factor, and it was concluded that the factor was the stereochemistry. The trans would be more stable than the cis. Why is that? Well, it's theorized that the methyl groups attached to the 2 carbons of the cis-2-butene are on the same side of the bond axis and are quite large, so that they start to have a steric interaction across this space between them. They're bumping into each other. Steric interactions raise your potential energy. In contrast, the trans-butene has large methyl groups attached to each carbon, but they're pointing in opposite directions, far away from each other, so they're not in a location where they can interact and bump into each other. And so therefore, they're less sterically crowded, they have lower amount of potential energy because of steric crowded, and their overall energy is lower. So this is what we concluded. Now the final thing to note is that it turns out subsequent to this, they have done heats of hydrogenation experiments on a wide variety of alkenes. And it turned out that it wasn't actually necessary to have them end up at the same product. So for example, if we look at pent-2-ene, the pent-1-ene, so the 5-carbon version of this molecule, what we see is that its delta H of hydrogenation is within a few tenths of a kilocalorie, almost identical to this. And the trend continues across all of these. So that this is our general trend. More substituted alkenes are more stable, and trans is more stable than cis. We're next going to look at a very subtle problem that occurs when we have alkenes, when we have double bonds in rings. Theoretically, when we put a double bond into a ring, it could be either in the cis or the trans stereochemistry configuration. However, what we find is when the ring is very small, in other words, the chain is too short, you can't actually create a trans double bond because the groups on each side of the double bond that are trans to each other would not be able to reach across the empty space and connect to form the bond closing the ring. They're just too far apart. We see that this is the case for 6-membered rings and smaller. You just cannot form that ring. If you try to do it with your model kit, you will see that it just puts an enormous amount of strain and they won't be able to be bonded together. They initially believed that trans-cycloheptene would also not be able to be formed based on models, but it turned out that an experiment was done where they took a reactant that could do a light-initiated reaction and become trans-cycloheptene. They froze that reactant in a noble gas, specifically argon, at a very low temperature, so that it couldn't move around freely and it wouldn't be able to interact with molecules and increase its potential energy and change. They then shone light in there and then used different light-absorbing methods to show that they had in fact created trans-cycloheptene, trans ring molecule 7-membered ring. However, that trans-cycloheptene is extremely unstable, and if they allowed that argon to warm up so that it melted and the trans-cycloheptene molecule could begin to move around and collide, it rapidly decomposed and reverted to a cis alkene. Trans-cyclooctene is the smallest stable trans-alkene, cycloalkene at room temperature. We can also make larger trans-cycloalkenes because as the chains get larger, it becomes totally possible for that chain to reach across and connect with the chain on the other side of the trans double bond. Let's look at trans-cyclooctene. Trans-cyclooctene looks something like this. We have a double bond. Notice the Z shape of the double bond. We're coming in on one side, leaving out on the opposite side of the bond axis. And then we just kind of have a chain that connects from one end around over to the other end. If we were to build a model, we would see it looks something like this, where in fact this chain connecting the two ends of these alkene groups is not flat in the plane. It's actually coming over and across the top of one of the faces of the flat alkene. When we look at a bridged bicyclic compound, we run into problems because bridged bicyclic compounds actually have within them 3 different rings of carbons that can be identified. Here's an example. For the time being, ignore this sketching and tracing here and just follow my cursor. If we look at this molecule, we have one ring that starts here, goes here, here, up over the top, back down to this side, over to here, and back to where we started. So that 6-membered ring is one of the rings. We also have a ring on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back to where we started. See, there's another 6-member ring here. Finally, we have a larger ring which goes around the bottom, which if we look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, back to where we started. So these are the 3 rings. The issue with double bonds at the bridgehead of a bicyclic compound is that when we look, we're going to have one bond coming in on one carbon of the double bond, and that's going to be in a particular position. Then on the other side, at the bridgehead, we're going to have 2 bonds leaving, going to 2 separate rings. One of these bonds will be on the same side of the bond axis as the incoming bond. That will make it cis. So that will be a cis double bond in a ring. But the other bond will have to come out on the other side of the bond axis, which is going to make it trans. And that bond will continue around and form a different ring. So this leads to a rule called Brett's rule. Bredt said, because double bonds can't be formed stably in 7-membered or smaller rings, in order to be able to get a bridgehead double bond, you're going to have at least 8 carbons in the longest of the 3 rings that we can trace out. And the trans double bond will have to be in that ring. So again, on our example here, if we look, here's our double bond. We have coming in, starting here at 1, coming in, 2, 3, and then going out on the opposite side of the bond axis, 4, and then continuing around, we have an 8-membered ring. So this molecule, which has a double bond on its bridgehead, is totally allowed. We can totally make that molecule. In contrast, what we see is that in this molecule, if we look, we have one double bond that's cis in a 5-membered ring. It comes in, goes here, goes out, cis, comes back around. That's 5 carbons. However, the trans double bond comes in, goes out on the opposite side, and only contains a total of 6 carbons. So it's a trans double bond in a 6-membered ring. That is not allowed. We cannot even make this molecule.